All right, everybody, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining me today. This was a lovely surprise to be able to do this and to come into this room, and I appreciate y'all showing up to do this with me. So we're here to talk today about Webex. How many of you have ever used Webex before? Okay, one person, one time. Okay, I'll take it. That's great. Okay, perfect. So my name is Sarah White-Gross. I'm in Information Systems. I recognize some of you from previous classes that I've offered. It's great to see you all again. For those I don't know, I hope this is worth your while and that you'll come back again. My email address is up on the screen, so if you have any questions moving forward as you use Webex, please feel free to shoot me an email. If I'm not super responsive, you can also email help@wfu.edu. That's my team, and we will get a response back to you as quickly as possible. So our agenda is really simple. I'm going to show you our Webex website, which is webex.wfu.edu. I'm going to explain all the available centers within Webex. Right now, that's probably foreign to you, but I'll explain what that means once we get inside Webex. We're going to focus on the meeting center. So I know that sounds probably very workish and maybe not academic, but we find that Meeting Center most often meets everyone's needs in terms of getting information conveyed back and forth, relayed back and forth. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And I'm actually going to show you Meeting Center both as the host and the attendee. So so what I'm planning to do is I'm going to schedule the meeting. You all will watch me schedule the meeting, and I'm going to invite you as guests. So on my screen, you'll see what it looks like to host. On your screen, you'll see what it looks like as an attendee, so that those you're meeting with, you'll kind of know what people are seeing, okay? So just to explain what Webex is, I think you probably already understand this, but it's an online way to virtually meet and collaborate and share information with anybody, anywhere in the world, as long as they have an internet connection. And we like to joke that it's both a noun and a verb, just like Google. It refers to, when we say Webex, this refers to all 4 collective centers. There are 4 centers I'm going to explain to you. Again, as I mentioned before, it's online. The only requirement is that you have an internet connection. Okay, so this is something that we're sort of bracing for. We don't know what our students and staff and faculty sort of have in terms of connectivity at home. So that's something to be mindful of. If you are in a part of your town where the bandwidth is low. I have an employee right now who we're trying to make provisions for. Her bandwidth in her area is really, really low. She has something just a smidge above dial-up. If that's what you're working with, if that's what one of your students is working with, keep in mind, this might be a challenge. These types of tools might be a challenge for them because this does require kind of a fair amount of bandwidth. Okay. Does this make sense, what Webex is? Okay, you all knew that already. Okay, perfect. So as I mentioned, there are 4 centers within Webex. We're going to focus on Meeting Center. The 4 centers are Meeting Center, Training Center, Support Center, and Event Center. I almost forgot. Meeting Center is what we're going to focus on. It's used primarily for trainings, of course, interviews, conference calls, small team meetings, committee meetings, etc. We also see it really used for really cool things like bringing guest speakers into classrooms from other countries, from other coasts. It's really, really fun to see how people are using this. And it's extremely interactive. It uses voice recognition. So if Sue chimes in at any point during our meeting, her face, her voice is going to be prominently displayed. We'll know that it's Sue who's talking. If a fire truck is blaring behind me or a dog starts barking in my background, my face is going to show up as the person, in this case, making the noise. So you'll see that sort of come and go throughout your meetings as people speak and as noise is happening in their background. Okay? Meeting Center is really, really superb. It's perfect for I think what we need it to be. Training Center, you might wonder if you're teaching, of course, why you might consider, or if you might consider using Training Center. I will say Training Center is just like Meeting Center, but on steroids. It offers a few more bells and whistles, including the ability to have breakout sessions. So if you typically have breakout sessions in your face-to-face classes, this could be something for you to look into. I think you can have up to 100 breakout sessions with 100 attendees in each of those breakout sessions. So truly Meeting Center on steroids. You can do a couple of additional things in Training Center, like set up quizzes. You have to do all of that in advance, but you can do some really, really fun things, but it looks very similar to Meeting Center. Okay. The other two centers, as I mentioned, Event Center and Support Center. Event Center is massive. You can invite up to 3,000 people to participate, except it's not interactive like meetings and trainings. This is one-way communication. So if ever you have attended a webinar online where you are muted as soon as you log in, you're just listening to one speaker or multiple speakers, you were probably attending an event. Okay. And then finally, Support Center. Hopefully none of you will ever have to use this, but this is something that my team uses. We use this to support people remotely. This just allows us to reach out to you. If you have called the help desk and you need something done on your computer, we can kind of log into your computer completely 100% permission-based. We literally can't do anything without you tapping OK on your screen. And we can go in and try to fix whatever might be going on within your computer using Support Center. Okay, so do those 4 centers make sense to you? Okay, very good. With that, again, we're going to focus on Meeting Center. Let's go ahead and dig in. If you haven't already, please go ahead out to webex.wfu.edu in whatever browser you prefer. As I mentioned, this is 100% online based, so please go ahead and visit that website. I'm going to go with you. And also note here at the bottom, we have instructional materials. These actually point directly to Cisco's instructional materials. The reason we have stopped writing instructions for Webex is because they update it and make changes just about monthly, which is thrilling and exciting, but it's too much for any human to keep up with in terms of instructions. So take note of that URL if you would like some instruction beyond this today. Okay, all right, I'm going to browse out to webex.wfu.edu. Oops, and I was already signed in. I'm going to show you what it looks like to sign all the way in. Okay, now what you see on your screen might look slightly different from mine. If yours looks really kind of fun and modern, you might be looking at the modern view. Is that what most of you are seeing when you come out here to webex.wfu.edu? Okay, perfect. So you're going to see one or the other, modern view or classic view. So as much as I love Cisco, they very generously offer us 2 viewing options. We can see what's called the classic view or the modern view. Whichever one you choose to use is completely up to you. For today's class, we're going to use classic view, just because I'm super comfortable with it, and there are a couple really fun features there that I'm going to show you. But again, whichever you prefer to use is 100% up to you. Things just look slightly different.
Get started while we're at home.
Mm-hmm.
Have to use the VPN.
You do not have to use VPN. Nope. Nope. Good question. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and click on Classic View. Again, you're welcome to stay in Modern View if you prefer. And then the next most important thing for me to do is sign in here. Okay, so go ahead and click on Sign In. I'm going to type in my address, and then you're going to see it's actually going to require it again. I'm going to click Next, and then it's going to ask me which Gmail account I'd like to use. Of course, I'm going to use my Wake Forest account. And this is where we want to be. This is what I wanted to show you. We have so much at our fingertips right here on this website. So as I mentioned before, we have 4 Webex centers. You'll notice all 4 of those if you are in Classic View. How many of you are in Classic View right now? Okay. Okay, good. So if you're in Classic View, you're going to see the tabs across the top with each of those Webex centers. So I see meetings, I see events, I see support, and I see training. So just for your, and so if you're not seeing it, you might have a little pull down thing here. You might notice right above your initials or your name, there's a little pull down. So if you don't see those options, just go ahead and click that pull down. So I'm just going to briefly show you each of these just so that you're familiar with what they might look like. So of course we're on the Home tab, and this should show you your initials right smack dab in the middle, good afternoon, Sarah, good morning, David, etc. It's going to be very kind and lovely. No matter what time of day it is, it's going to address you nicely. You'll see the option right smack dab also in the middle to start a meeting. Please don't go ahead and click that yet. But what that would allow you to do is launch directly into a meeting immediately. So if I happen to be on the phone with you, David, and I said, you know what, let me just show you what I'm talking about rather than talking about it over the phone, I could start a meeting. From inside that meeting, I could invite you, and we could be seeing exactly the same thing. You'll notice right under that Smart Meeting button, Start Meeting, Smart Meeting, that's adorable, Start Meeting, there's the option to start by browser. What this does is just simply opens up a new tab within the browser, and it's a very sort of minimized skeletal version of Webex. It's just a real quick way to launch into a meeting and be able to see each other. It does have far fewer features than what we see if we actually schedule a meeting. Okay, this is just a real quick zoom into a meeting. I shouldn't say zoom. Get into a meeting very quickly. So that's what we see when we're right here on this Home tab. And some of you may or may not see a coffee cup, apparently. So that's what Home looks like. Now moving back up here to the top where we see this little bar of tabs, the next tab next to Home is the Webex Meetings tab. We're going to spend a lot of time in this in just a few minutes, but this is where we're going to go in and schedule our meeting. This is where we can look at our recorded meetings. By the way, you can record your meetings. We're going to spend a good chunk of time here. Let me show you really briefly, though, these other tabs across the top here. Webex Events. Remember, this is where we can schedule an event for up to 3,000 people, not interactive. This is just if we want to have maybe a great big webinar type thing. No feedback, no kind of questions or anything from the audience. This is just us speaking. How many of you have no interaction? No interaction. How many of you would ever envision yourself giving an event like that? Okay, good. Well then, we'll leave it right there. Perfect. If ever you do need to, this is where you would go in to schedule that. Webex support, as I mentioned before, hopefully you never ever have to use this. But if ever you're on the phone with someone at in my area, if ever you need tech support, we may use this to log into your computer with your permission, of course, to try to figure out what might be going wrong. Okay? And then finally, the last center that we see here is Training Center. Very, very similar, like I mentioned before, to Meeting Center, just offers several more bells and whistles in terms of the features that we can use. Okay. And then, of course, the very last tab here is My Webex, and this is a very similar kind of screen to what we saw on the Home tab. We just see some different features listed on the left here. This is where I can go in and set up my preferences. I can look at support. I can look at some training materials, etc. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and click back on Webex Meetings, and I would love to show you some things that we see here. Okay. So you may notice, hopefully on your screens, like mine, under Host a Meeting, is this expanded for everyone? Do you all see things under Host a Meeting? Okay, if yours is not expanded, just go ahead and click that little expander to the left of Host a Meeting, and you should see several options here. Okay? The first option that we see under Host a Meeting is My Personal Room. That's exactly the same. If I click that, that's the same as clicking Start Meeting. What that does, again, as I mentioned before, is launches into my own personal conference room. It's just as if next to my office, I have a conference room. This is my virtual meeting space. The name of this space never changes. It's the same URL no matter what. So I can use that URL over and over and over again. I can say, click here to have office hours with me, or click here to whatever, join my meeting. What's wonderful about that is that the URL never ever changes. Okay, so that's your personal room. You can have up to 500 attendees in your personal room. For regular Webex meetings, it's 1,000 members who can join you. Okay, so that's my personal room, and it looks exactly like a regular Webex meeting. Below that, we see Schedule a Meeting. This is what I'm going to show you in depth in just a minute. Meet Now, this is also just a quick way to launch into a meeting. My meetings will show you any meetings that you have coming up, that you are hosting or that you have been invited to through Webex. And then finally, I see my recorded meetings. How many of you anticipate potentially recording meetings? Okay, very good, a couple of you. So yeah, so we can absolutely record meetings. Of course, by the way, it is always good etiquette. It might even be like requirement that if you're gonna record a meeting that you let your guests know before you click that button to start recording. What's great is we have our recorded meetings right here. They do, of course, take a little time to render and process and be available after the class has finished. But once your class is over or your meeting is over, you can click on My Recorded Meetings and you'll see all of them listed here. If I were to click this link, I could see information about it. So I can get my streaming recording link, so I could send this out to people. I could download the recording link. If I go back to where I just was in my recorded meetings, off to the side here, I see the option to play these. I see the option to email these. And if I click the ellipsis, I have additional features, including downloading this. I'm going to skip over modify because we don't want to modify our videos because the Webex editor is, we're just not going to use the Webex editor. I would just download it and then maybe convert it to another file type and then edit it in some other video editor. The last two options that we see here under this ellipsis are disable and delete. So the only reason why you might consider disabling something, what that does effectively is break the link to this recording. So maybe if you want to make a recording available for, say, 2 weeks before the exam, and then cut off the ability for people to see it, when it's exam time, you can disable the link. This could be a good reason to disable something. What's very, very important is that eventually you start deleting or downloading and then deleting your videos. As you can see here, we have limited storage space where we can store these videos. So as soon as possible, send those out, tell people to view them, download them, whatever the case may be, and then as you can, come in here and delete them. Sure, yes, you can download them and put them on Drive, absolutely. Yeah, I would, if you want to download them and put them up on, like say Google Drive, absolutely, and share them there, beautiful, and then delete it from here. Yeah, because our storage here is limited, whereas our storage in Google Drive is unlimited. So that's I'm glad that you mentioned that. That's a perfect way to share videos. Okay. Any questions about recording or recordings? Okay. All right, let's schedule a Webex then. Let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to just click on schedule a meeting here on the left side. And you'll notice we have some empty fields here that we need to fill out, but this is it. This is it. This is all we have to do. And some of these are already filled out for us, which is amazing. So I'll start at the very top here. It's asking for a meeting topic. You can call this whatever makes most sense for you, whether that's your class name, whether it's your meeting, your group, whatever makes most sense to you. If that's, you know, Econ 150, whatever makes most sense. You're certainly welcome to name things however you would like. For this example, I'll just call this English 220, because I have no idea what else I would call it. Password, you can give it a password. There's already a password provided for you. You're certainly welcome to keep that. You can also customize that. It just cannot be wake. We discovered it can't be wake. I don't know why or how, but anything but wake. And it has to be minimum 4 characters, I believe, I think. We'll see. So I'm just going to call this English 220 because I am not creative today. So we're going to leave it like that. You'll see that the date and time are auto-filled for us for the next sort of 15-minute increment. And actually, I must have opened this up right at 3 o'clock. So I'll leave it at today's date. I'll go ahead and just make this 3:10 to give us a couple of minutes. Now, if I had left this at 3 o'clock, if you notice when I scroll down, this little green button says start. It recognizes that I'm right in kind of the crunch time to start this meeting. But if I change this to, say, 3:15, my green button changes to scheduled meeting. So don't ever feel like you have to launch into a meeting or a class as soon as you schedule it, okay? And of course, if you don't want to schedule this for today, you can certainly click the date and browse out to, say, next Friday. You can absolutely schedule these as far out as you would like. Okay. Duration is auto filled for 1 hour. 1 hour. If you would like to change that, maybe if you're just meeting for a 50-minute class, you can click this blank space above 1, and you'll notice these are in 10-minute increments, and then they start to change toward the end there, 45 and then 50 minutes. Okay, yeah.
If we do that, will it cut us off at 51 minutes?
It will not cut you off. I'm glad that you asked. All of this does, the only place that this shows the date, time, and duration is in the My Meetings area, where it shows sort of a calendar. Nothing will break if you go over or if you go under. Everything is just fine. I'm glad you asked that. Thank you for asking that. Okay, oh, and of course, if you want to have a really long meeting or class, you can have a 24-hour marathon meeting. Just kidding, I would not recommend that. I'm going to leave this set at 50 minutes. So far, so good? Are we okay so far? Okay. Okay, very good. Now down below that, I see the option to add attendees. So keep in mind there are multiple ways to add your class attendees or the folks you're going to be meeting with. This is just one of those ways. If I invite people from right here, when they log into webex.wfu.edu and click on My Meetings, they're going to see this meeting listed as a meeting that they've been invited to. Another way for me to invite people is through the actual Webex itself. So if I launch into the Webex, maybe David and I were just talking on the phone, I decide we need to meet online. That's not going to show up in his meetings until I invite him from inside that Webex. A third way for me to invite people is when I get the confirmation for this Webex in my email, it's going to give me the option to forward that out to others. So I could forward it straight from my email or even straight from my calendar if I wanted to. That's yet another way. But that will not show up here in the Webex My Meetings because I've invited them from a location outside of Webex. Okay, so only if I put people's names right here will it show up in their Webex area. And that's perfectly okay. I've seen people never ever use this box, and that's totally okay. A couple of reasons why you might consider using this box, though, is that we can do a couple of extra cool things from right here. So for example, Sue, what is your email address? Is that rup.s? Oh, just rup, okay. When I enter somebody's email address, I'll click enter on my keyboard, and now she shows up down below. You'll notice the option next to her name. I can see the option to make this attendee an alternate host. This is wonderful if I'm setting this up for somebody else. So maybe if I've got a TA or maybe I'm setting this up for a colleague to be able to do. I have no intention of actually being in this meeting. I'm just doing it for them, or there's a good chance I will not be in the meeting, etc. I can make somebody else the alternate host. That means Susan will receive the host email with the host key to be able to start the meeting, and she can run the whole thing without me. So this is one great reason to use this attendee box. Okay, and of course next to her name, if she emails me and says, actually I can't make it at all, I can certainly remove her using this icon here. Okay, but I will go ahead and make her an alternate host just for demo purposes. Okay, keep in mind we cannot make anybody an alternate host who is not a WFU student. If they don't have an @wfu.edu email address, they cannot be an alternate host. Okay, does that make sense? Yes?
Teaching one of my courses, so can the other professor be an alternate host?
Is he awake, professor?
Yes.
Or she? She? Yes, she absolutely can. Yep, as long as she's awake, professor. Now, we would run into an issue with this if she were, you know, from Columbia or Brown or some other institution, but as long as she is awake, Forest Temper. Perfect. Yep, she's all set then. And you can even make, of course, students alternate hosts because they have @wfu.edu accounts. Okay. Okay, very good. So the rest of you I'm going to add in other ways to our meeting, if that's all right. I'm just going to show you all the possible ways to do this. Now below this, of course, I see two options. This first one is completely up to you. It's a little risky, I suppose, maybe, or daring. You can choose to let anyone with a host account on this site or anyone joining from an authenticated Cisco video device in this organization host my meeting. So that would be like saying, hey, Sarah, you can go host my meeting if you want to. That's up to you. I would probably be a little bit careful with that and maybe not check that box. But the second box where I see the option to send a copy of the invitation email to me, I do want to check that box. And the reason why I do want to do that is so that I get that email that I can forward out to other people, inviting them to the meeting. The very last thing to draw your attention to is the audio conference option that says Webex audio. I would always recommend to leave that as it is. I know you see the option to change audio conference. I would not do that. It's all the way here at the bottom. If you change that, that's going to offer you only one method for your attendees to join via the audio. So by the way, Webex sort of looks at Webex meetings in two ways. One part video, one part audio. Both are very important. Audio is obviously the most important part. We want to be able to hear what's being said. So leaving it set to Webex audio gives your attendees the ability to join by phone or using their computers, speakers, and microphone. Because we don't know the state of anyone's computer or the state of anyone's phone, we probably don't want to choose one or the other. If we leave it set at Webex audio, they get to choose that. And so do you as the host. Okay, so I would always leave this as is. That's all we have to fill out. So if you want to set this up as a recurring meeting, so what we have just done is I think called the basic scheduler. If you would like to set up something with recurring meetings, you can click Advanced Scheduler at the top here. And off to the far right here, I see date and time. And you'll notice at the bottom here, I see recurrence. So if I wanted to set this up weekly, every, say, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I just check those boxes. When I click Schedule Meeting, it's going to invite all of those folks, and it's going to kind of set it up on their calendars when they get the calendar invite for those days of the week. So yeah, if any of you are setting this up for long term, for the foreseeable future, this could be really helpful for those recurring classes or meetings. All right, so maybe I wonder if this is a good time to show you another super quick and easy way to schedule a Webex. Would you like to see a sort of cheat way? Sure, we can, yes. Let's go ahead and click that Schedule Meeting. And when you click that Schedule Meeting, it does show you a little summary of what you've just scheduled. I can see everything I've just done. When I click on More Information, I actually can see the link to this Webex, so I could certainly email or chat this out to folks if I needed to. I see information about it. And we could even kind of launch right into it if it's time. Okay? Not yet. Hold on one second. I will show you actually also in your inboxes. So because if you check that box to invite or send a copy of the invitation to me too, when you click on your inbox, I should have Webex meetings. You should have two notifications in your inbox. One that says, hey, Sarah, you have scheduled a meeting, and one that says, forward to others. We see this only because we checked that box to send a copy of the invitation to me. So if I want to use this as a method for inviting people, if you choose not to put anybody in that box that we saw on that scheduler, no names in that attendee box, if I wanted to, from right here, I could simply forward this out. It's telling me, forward this to others. Google and Webex know we want to send this out to people. So I can come over to my ellipsis here, I could forward this, and this is how I'm going to invite a few of the rest of you. I'm just going to go ahead and hit send. And then, of course, you might have noticed at the top, it did give me the option just to add this to my calendar from right here. So I can simply click yes, and these now appear on my very messy calendar. Please forgive me. But now I can see my English 220 every week. Let me find a place where it's not messy. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And they go on. I didn't put an end date. Whoops. I'm going to be teaching English 220 for the rest of my life. So that's yet another way that you can kind of invite people, is through your email. So let's get into our English 220. I'm going to go ahead and click Start, and you are all welcome to join me as well, because you can do that via your calendar, via your Webex website here. You should see a link to allow you to join the meeting in that invitation or in your calendar invite. All right. So the first thing that we see here that we're prompted with, or at least that I am prompted with, I think you all should be too, Webex kindly turns on our cameras because we're ready for that always. So just keep in mind your camera's going to be turned on. It's offering us a couple of options here. I don't know if you can tell, but it's offering me to use my video system. So that's a little bit misleading. My video system is actually my Cisco phone on my desk. So do you all have that really super cool Cisco video phone on your desks in your offices?
Yes.
Okay. If you have that, if you don't have that, then you might not have this option. Or no, actually you should. What this means, for those folks who do have a Cisco video phone in your areas, what you could do is click Use Video System. It's going to ask you for your video address, which is your email address. What that would allow you to do is attend the audio portion of this meeting using your video phone. Okay. Do we all see, or did we all see something similar to this at some point? I'll take your silence as a maybe. Maybe I saw something like this. Okay, so as I mentioned before, the Use Video System, that's only if you wish to use the phone in your office. Okay, and when you click that, it asks you to enter a video address. This is your email address if you wish to use it. Now, I completely understand we're probably about to be working completely remotely off campus, so we won't even do this. We won't even address this. But if ever you wish to do this in your offices when you come back, for those of you who do have a Cisco video phone, you could use that as your audio source if you wish. Okay, the next option that we see in the middle gives us additional call options. The very first one here is Use Computer for Audio. This wishes to use your microphone and speakers on the computer to connect to the audio. This works like a charm, especially if you have something like this. Have you all gotten these things with your cell phones for free over the years? I think I have like a dozen of these things. These things are surprisingly amazing to connect, as long as it's, you know, your earbud and an inline microphone. These things work magnificently. If you've got a little plug in the side of your computer, these work really, really well. So you would plug this in and choose Use Computer for Audio. Okay. I got these by clicking the center here where I see these options. Okay, so we see Use Computer for Audio. We next see the option to call me. So this is asking. Yep, you just have to make sure that they're connected to your computer's Bluetooth. Those work well as well. Yeah, absolutely. You can choose to call me or call in. So if I choose call me, it's gonna, I can type in my phone number and Webex will call me. If I choose call in, it's gonna give me some phone numbers. Well, in just a second, it'll give me some phone numbers that I can dial. One will be a toll free and one will be a toll number. Just a little word to the wise, you can always dial the toll number, the whatever it is, the 650 or 640 or whatever. Long distance is free. We actually do get charged for the 800 number, the toll numbers. So you can always call the toll number. It's not going to cost Wake Forest a thing. Okay. Of course, computer for audio is always going to be your best bet. And then, of course, you do see the option, don't connect to audio. The only reason I would ever not connect to audio is if you're sitting in the room with somebody else who's also on the same Webex. I know that sounds weird, but if we're all sitting next to each other, or even two people are sitting next to each other who are in the same Webex, we're going to get terrible, screeching, blood-curdling feedback that's going to make you wish you hadn't connected. So only have one person connected, which might be a reason for you to not choose. Don't connect to audio. That is if you've got more than one person in the physical room with you joining this Webex. I'm going to go ahead and just connect. I'm going to click Start Meeting. By the way, if I wanted to turn off my camera, maybe I'm a little camera shy, I can absolutely do that by clicking Stop Video. Okay. I'm going to turn it back on because I have no shame. We're just going to do this. I'm going to click Start Meeting. And from inside this meeting, I can already see so many other people in here. This is awesome. So you can see at the bottom where other people are joined. It's again prompting me, so I chose not to join not to join the audio. So it's prompting me, please do something, connect to the audio. I'm not going to because we're all together here. So I'm just going to close this. And then, of course, at the bottom here, I see all of these little menu buttons. One of these buttons, the ellipsis, offers me the option to invite and remind. So this is the final way to invite people to a meeting. So finally, I get to invite Brenda and Allison. So I'm going to click invite and remind. I'm going to go over here to email. And if I could ask you, Brenda, what's your email address? And I'm going to click send. And it tells me 2 invitations were sent. So now Allison and Brenda, you should see in your inboxes finally an invitation for today's Webex. So if somebody is being particularly noisy, so if I'm in the background with a fire truck or a barking dog or something like that, you'll notice as the host, when I hover over people's names, I see the option, or people's faces. This is only as the host. I don't believe you can do this as a regular attendee, but I see the option to mute folks. So if I wanted to mute, well, I can't mute myself, Sue, I can simply click that little microphone over Sue's little icon here, and that mutes her. And I can now see that she's muted. Oh, it just disappeared. Because the little microphone icon turned red. Oh, I can't mute myself because I'm not connected to the audio, but you should, next to your camera, you should see a microphone. Do you see a microphone in your list of menu buttons down here at the bottom? Now, let me go through each of these buttons that we see at the bottom. Again, I might see 1 or 2 more buttons than you see, but you should see a bunch yourself. So the very first thing that you should hopefully see is either connect to audio or mute your microphone. Do you all see a microphone option there? The very first button on the left? Okay, that is how you can mute and unmute yourself. So when you're having a meeting or a class with your attendees, you can say, okay, David, go ahead and unmute yourself, or David, go ahead and mute yourself, whatever the case may be. That's that very first button. It's very helpful to kind of know where that is. The next button, of course, is your camera. That's how people turn on and off their cameras. The next button is super, super helpful. This is share content. What this allows us to do literally is share content. So when I click this button, you'll notice I have several possible things that I could share with you. I could share with you my entire screen if I wanted you to see everything that I'm doing. I could share with you whatever I have open in my background. So I could share Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Calculator, although I don't have any of those things open. Oh, somebody's sharing. And that's okay. This always happens inevitably in this class. That's okay. Oops. All right, and then of course below that I see the option to share a file, share an application, or share a whiteboard. So I'm going to just demonstrate a couple of these things for you to see exactly what this looks like. Allison's already a pro at this, as you can see. No, that's okay. I'm glad you're testing it. So the very first thing I'm going to show you is just my screen. I'm just going to share with you my screen so that you can see everything that's going on my computer. So this is really helpful if maybe you're walking somebody through an entire process on your computer. So let's say you teach
Chemistry.
Yes, chemistry, and maybe you use, what's the application you use most in your class?
To teach?
Yeah.
The whiteboard?
Oh, you do? You use Whiteboard. Okay, we'll come to that in just a second.
The actual, like a real whiteboard.
We'll come to that. Yes, we'll get there. But let's say I'm an English professor. This is English 220, isn't it? So if I wanted to teach how to do something in Microsoft Word, maybe we're going to write a paper. I can literally open up Microsoft Word, and I can show you how to create a blank document. I can show you the home, insert, draw, design, layout tabs. You see everything that I'm doing on my computer because I've shared with you my entire screen. You see everything, okay? Now at the very top here, when I'm sharing this type of content, I see the option to, when I hover up, I see a dock. I see the option to stop sharing. I can pause my sharing. This is helpful maybe if I get a chat. Maybe if I've got a chat client open and I don't want someone to see that my husband wants to know what's for dinner or whatever. I can pause this sharing so that I can finish up that chat and then come back out here if I needed to. From here, I could also change what I'm sharing and choose one of those other options that I saw before. I could assign control to this. So if I wanted someone to show me how to do something in Microsoft Word, I could say, make this participant the presenter. I could also pass, keyboard and mouse control. So if I wanted Allison to show me how to do a table of contents in Microsoft Word, I could literally assign privileges over to Allison, grant her control, and she could now go in and type on my document. She could do anything at all on this document. I know. It's like literally just picking up and handing your computer to somebody else. It's kind of magical. Okay. All right. And then, of course, I can always regain that control simply by clicking my mouse. So she can't get too out of control here. So I can rein it in. All I have to do is click on my mouse to get that control back. My mouse. Yep, just to get that back. Okay, coming back up here to my assign, there was one last thing here, and that is allow to annotate. So what I could do here is I could give all of you annotation rights on this document. How wild is that? So if I click all, you'll notice on the far left, you should now have an annotation panel. Oh, yay, somebody discovered it. Perfect. So you can see off to the side here, you can choose a pen, you can choose to type, you can choose an arrow to put your name in certain locations. You can start typing. You just have to select your tool from this column off to the far left. No, that's correct, and I only see those because I'm the host, and because this is my content that I'm sharing. So whenever you're the host and you share content, you'll see that. Yeah, if that makes sense. Okay. Okay, good. So this is thrilling. So this is one magical way that I can kind of get engagement from my students, from my attendees. I can get you all kind of participating in what we're working on here. Okay. Also in this doc that appears at the top, yet again, I can change how I'm connected to my audio. Yet again, I can change my video. Oops, let me get rid of that. From here, I could turn on my recorder, but I have that ability right inside the Webex meeting as well. I can see my participants panel simply by clicking participants. I can see chat. Again, I see annotate, and then I can see a few more options that we're going to see inside the Webex itself. But I just want you to be aware that there is a hovering dock that appears for the host when I share certain things, in this case, when I share the screen. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this before y'all get too out of control here. I love it, though. Thank you for doing that. That was perfect. So I'm going to go back to my sharing button, because that's what I was kind of focused on, share content. So that was sharing my screen. As you can see, I could share any one of these things that I have in the background. I could also share a file. So how many of you open your classes with a PowerPoint? How many of you use slides? Okay, good, me too, perfect. Okay, good. So if you have prepared slides for your classes, this is a great way to share them. The reason why I might not share those slides using my screen or an application is because when I share file, it only shares the content, only what's inside those slides, not the ribbons, not the thumbnails, just the content. Let me show you what that looks like. So if I click share here on share file, it's going to ask me what I want to share. I'm going to locate on my desktop a PowerPoint, the same PowerPoint that I opened today's class with. Video Conferencing 101, I'll click open. Actually probably all of you would probably receive this little message that if you're using Microsoft Office 2016 or later, it's not going to let you use any transitions or animations between your slides. So if you've got those really fun things happening between objects or bullet points or those fun things between your slides altogether, those are not going to come through. It's just kind of everything on the slide all at once, which still kind of works. So I'm just going to click OK, continue. I'll click OK. My slides are loading. And now, as you see, here are my slides. I can even use a clicker. So even if I'm sitting in my pajamas on my sofa at home, if I want to click through these slides, I say that, and I'm clicking, and it's totally not working. There we go. OK. I can advance through my slides using my clicker. All right, and just like I mentioned, I don't see the kind of content around, or the stuff around my content. I don't see the ribbon at the top. I don't see my thumbnails. I just see what's being presented. And then of course, so I'm gonna go ahead and close out of here. The way I can close out of here, you might notice there's no hovering dock like we saw with sharing a screen. When you share a file, we have sort of minimal capabilities in terms of things that we can do from right here. So when I hover up here, I just see two options. I can change the name of this document and I can close it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and close it. It's gonna double check to tell me, are you sure you wanna close this? I'll say yes. I don't wanna save the current document with my little edits here. And then I can go back out to where we were. Okay, so we do also have the option to add a new whiteboard. So this is also kind of magical. When I click share next to new whiteboard, I'm gonna click OK. I'm gonna make sure that you all have annotation rights, and you do. So at this point, you all could choose any of your annotation options here, whether you're typing or drawing, and you can all draw magnificent things like a line, smiley faces. You could write things. This is a great way to sort of break the ice. I've seen people say, where's everybody at right now in the world? Where are you? And have people type things out, or what did you think of the reading, or whatever. This could be a fun way to open a class. So just like I closed my previous slideshow, I'm gonna go ahead and close this whiteboard as well. Now, if this has been as magical for you as it has been for me, you can also save this whiteboard. So if you want to capture all of this magic that people have drawn, when I click close here, it asks me if I would like to save this current masterpiece. Of course, I'm going to say yes. And I can call it whatever I would like. I'll just leave it as whiteboard, and I'll click save. Oops. Okay, very good. So that was our shared content. Now the next button that I see, and I don't think anybody else but probably Sue saw this, is the recorder button. So as I mentioned before, always be sure to announce to your attendees that you're going to be recording. When I click this, it shows me kind of a counter. I'll click record, and it's gonna start recording. And I believe for most of you, or all of you, I think, it should show you that it's recording. There should be a pulsing red button. It used to be in the bottom left corner. I don't know where it is now. It might be up in the top right corner. Do you see a red button showing you that it's recording? Okay, okay, good. So if you forget to tell people, they will find out if they see that little button. Do keep in mind though, recorded meetings do not render like this. So what that means is the recorded meeting, even though it might just be my talking head, it's actually going to be primarily just a big white space, and then in the top or bottom right, you'll see a small thumbnail of your face. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. Now the next button that I see is the participants button. When I click on that, I can see all of you lined up on the right. I can see everyone who is in this meeting. And I can see even kind of that you are joined to the audio based on these little headsets. If any of you had called in, I would see a little phone next to your names. It's very intuitive. And I can see how many of you are muted here off to the side and have your cameras on. So we can see really cool things here. Okay. And this is a toggle on, toggle off button. So if I want to get rid of that participants panel because it is so huge, I can just go ahead and click that button to get it to go away again. Okay. Next to that, we see this little chat bubble. This gives us the option to chat with people. I will tell you, chat is wildly important and helpful, especially when folks have audio troubles. And audio troubles abound, unfortunately, sometimes when it comes to online meetings. So the chat is something you'll probably really want to pay close attention to, because if any of your attendees are having trouble hearing or being heard, they'll probably log in or click on that chat and say, wait, hold on, I can't hear, or I have something to say. So try to be mindful of that chat feature. And a couple notes about this chat feature. When you open up the panel, it looks pretty huge off to the side here, but you actually type in this tiny little box at the bottom. Tiny, tiny little thing. So this is where I could say, hi, everyone. And that should show up for all of you. Maybe if I just wanted to send a message, though, to Allison that says, Thank you for your thoughtful paper. Only she will see that, and I know that only she sees that because it says in parentheses next to her name, privately. Okay, so this also means that your attendees can totally have private chats with each other during class. so just keep that in mind. So if you hear lots of tapping, that they might be chatting. Okay, so that's our chat. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. And then finally, again, inside this ellipsis that I showed you before, we did have several options. When I click that, I see a couple things at the top. I see the option to take notes. So how many of you take notes in your meetings and classes? Or if your attendees want to take notes, if they come in here, they can click on notes, and they can literally take all the notes in the land right here. And these are my own private notes. These are not going to be shared with anybody else unless I share them deliberately. At the bottom here, I have the option to save these, and they are saved as a very primitive but totally effective TXT file. So you can, of course, open that up into Microsoft Word, a Word document, and make it look pretty, but it's a very primitive document just with your notes. Okay. I'll close that. I'm going to come back to polling if time permits. Lock meeting. This is something that I see as the host. This could be really, really helpful if I want to have a private conversation with someone who has not, and keep out anybody who has not yet joined the meeting. So this is just like locking the door after 15 minutes of class, like my professors used to do and say, if you're not here by now, you're locked out. That's exactly the same. Nobody else can join in once I have locked this meeting. Okay, the invite and remind, we already saw that. Copy meeting link, I could literally click this, get the link, and send it out to somebody, maybe who I would like to join us. Audio connection, that just allows me, once again, the opportunity to change how I'm connected with the audio. Camera, turn on or off my camera, or I can set a different camera. So if you've got a USB camera, maybe if you've got multiple people in the room and you're trying to highlight everybody who's here, I could select that camera here. And then connect to a device. This is the same as the connect to your video system that we saw at the beginning, connecting to your phone in your office. Okay. One other thing I didn't show you under invite and remind. So we have 3 ways to invite people, or to sort of get people here. One is email. That's how I invited Allison and Brenda. Another way is by phone. So if you know somebody's phone number and you dial them and they answer, they're in the Webex. Surprise. That's just yet another way to invite somebody. And then, of course, the remind option allows us to invite anybody who has not yet shown up for the meeting. And that is incorrect, because I know, David, you are here. So that's interesting. But those are 3 additional ways to get folks here. Okay, now the last thing that was in here that I skipped over is polling. How many of you would be interested in polling your students occasionally, asking them a question? Okay, all right, so this is a really fun thing. It's not turned on by default, so I would have to come in here and turn it on. When I click on polling, it allows me to ask a question kind of on the fly. You all can't see what I'm doing. In fact, you have no idea on your screens what I'm doing. So if I wanted to ask you a question, maybe a multiple choice single answer, or a multiple choice multiple answer, or even a short answer, I could select one of those. I'll click new to ask my question, and I will ask you, what is the capital of Pennsylvania? And in my possible answers, I'll add Philadelphia. I'm just going to hit enter to add more possible answers. Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, Scranton, yes, Scranton, Dunder Mifflin, yes. All right, so when it's time for me to ask this question, I could record your individual responses if I want to know, is Sarah actually paying attention to this? I could check that box. And when I click open poll, it should open for you all. And you can see, I can watch how people are responding. I can see that one is finished, one has answered with Harrisburg. I can see, isn't it fun to watch how you're answering? This is thrilling, isn't it?
You know how many events we've not really seen.
Not yet, until I go in and look at those individual responses. Right. I can only see how you're responding. I wouldn't give, I mean, you could. I don't know if I probably would, though, because you have to set this up either on the fly or in advance. It's up to you. It is super easy, absolutely. So I can see we need to revisit our Pennsylvania geography. But the three of you who did answered correctly. Harrisburg is the correct answer. I will be going there tomorrow myself. So this is a fun way to just sort of track our progress and see kind of how we're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. It's a 5-minute limit by default. So keep that in mind. We don't want to ask 18 questions because we only have 5 minutes. So I'll click close. And then if I wanted to get those individual results, I can click that and I can see who needs to revisit their geography lessons. Okay. All right, I'm going to go back to the meeting. So that was polling.
But someone who's calling in can't obviously.
Correct, right. If they're only participating in the audio, they can't participate in this. Yeah, good point, very good point. All right, now I know that we have less than 1 minute to go here, and I want to be mindful of your time. For all of you, whether you're using Windows or Mac computers, across the top you should see several drop-down menus with a lot of the same options and features that we've already seen here. There are a couple of additional things I want to quickly draw your attention to, including under the participant drop-down menu. You'll notice you do have the ability to mute everyone on entry. That could be really, really helpful if you're inviting, a class of 35 people into one room, so that you don't hear the beep beep, beep beep, beep beep as people join. That could be really, really helpful, because otherwise entry and exit tone is checked. You're going to hear every time somebody comes and goes. All right. You'll also notice the option that anyone can share is selected by default. This was a change that Webex put into place maybe a couple of years ago. This means at any time, anybody can click that share button and share things. Very sweet, but right, it can be very disruptive. So you might want to go ahead and simply click that little check to make it unchecked. The last thing that I'll show you here under participant, I need to select a participant to show you this, but let's say this Sarah person in this class or in this meeting has a very noisy background. And in fact, it's so noisy that it's extremely disruptive. She's being a real problem. What I could do is click her name. I'm just going to choose one of Jane's here. And I could actually expel this person. I know this sounds terrible, but sometimes this isn't necessary in order to kind of get somebody. Sometimes they just need to go out of the meeting and then come back in to maybe resolve any audio issues or something like that. Or in the bad cases, if somebody's being disruptive intentionally, we can expel them. So, or real live case here, if somebody thinks they've left the class or the meeting and they've simply closed their laptop, if they walk away, go to another space, open up their laptop, and if the meeting is still happening, they're still going to be in it. That's another reason why you might choose to expel somebody, so that they're actually gone from the class if they wished to leave the class, if that makes sense. Okay. Oh, we are 2 minutes over. Okay. Everything else that we see in these drop-down menus, for the most part, we have covered. How do you all feel about this WebEx? You feel all right? Okay. Okay. Thanks. Do you feel enough to be good enough to be dangerous? Okay. Absolutely. That's perfectly okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this WebEx. And as a bonus for all of you who have stayed this long, I'm just going to end this, and you'll see what this looks like to end and leave the meeting. Okay, now as a bonus, I promised you before there's a cheat. There's a cheat way to schedule a meeting. The way to do that, let me get rid of this little thing here. If I wanted to schedule the meeting on the fly from my calendar, not going into webex.wfu.edu, if I just want to do this from my calendar, I can come to my calendar, I can click and drag over a space on my calendar, and I can say English 220. In my add rooms, location, or conferencing, I can say add location at WebEx. I'll hit enter, and then I'm going to click save. And of course, also from here, I could invite people. So if I wanted to invite David and Brenda Smith and maybe Matt, just because you guys are rock stars for being here, and Preston, thank you. When I click on save, I won't send this because I'm going to delete it from your calendars, but it looks like nothing has happened, right? It seems like all I've done is scheduled a meeting. But if I give this just a few seconds to go to Mars and back, when I click on this calendar invite, hopefully I've given it enough time, and I go to edit this, hold on just 1 second, I'm going to try this again. It needs a little more time. Oh, there it is. Magically, it has included all my Webex personal meeting room information. It just takes a few seconds, and by few, maybe 15, 20 seconds for that to work. You just have to put @Webex in the location.
So when I click on that,
All right. That's all I have for you guys. I'll stick around if you have questions. Otherwise, thank you all so much for sticking it out with me today. Please let me know if you have questions moving forward with this.